Hi, folks, and welcome to Gersnet, your independent Rangers podcast, YouTube channel, website, and all-round social media empire. Brought to you by Rangers fans, and it's for Rangers fans. All your content's absolutely free, and we're coming to you in association with Forest Precision Engineering. My name's Alec Anderson. I'll be your host this evening. As we're recording this special bonus World Cup pod on the evening of Monday, the 12th of December, 2022. We're going to try and roll it out sometime either this evening or first thing tomorrow morning ahead of Argentina playing Croatia in the first of the 2022 World Cup semi-finals, because this is the fifth in this special kind of bonus series of podcasts myself and Brian are doing regarding the FIFA World Cup. And I know a few people maybe still have a problem with that. I've certainly I have a bit of a problem with some of the coverage of the World Cup. But you feel slightly guilty, to say the least, sometimes. Hearing commentators talking about the lovely stadiums as the kind of tournament winds down, and kind of infrastructural physical terms, we've only got 4 teams left. There's only going to be 4 games left now. Commentators are starting to say goodbye to the stadiums, and they're commenting on how lovely it's been and what have you. And there's no mention, basically, of the kind of hundreds, thousands of people that have actually died building these stadiums, and it's all a bit disconcerting for the likes of myself. But that's one of these things. We knew that sports washing, that's how it works. Brian and I said at the beginning of the tournament, we know that a World Cup will eventually drag you in. It's so dramatic. The football's so epic. It's so momentous, the general history of football, that eventually you almost forget about the problems of the host nation and the kind of human rights abuses that are going on. I would still urge people to check out equidem.org, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. Have a look at their Twitter feeds, have a look at their websites. I'm going to be donating to equidem.org and giving them £1 for every game that I watch at this World Cup, because they're actually pushing for FIFA to compensate the families of the people who died building these stadiums. Equidem.org, totally reputable. They've been used by the Guardian newspaper and website as a source for the figures that we're quoting regarding the human rights abuses going on here. I know it's not very pleasant to talk about, but I think it's been brought home to me. Brian, you remember last summer, you were watching the Euros last summer?
Yeah. Yep.
And you remember Denmark against Finland?
Yep. Yeah, how can you forget? Yeah.
How can you forget? I know. And I think it's quite right. Like ITV's coverage, like I think I'm talking about here is ITV's coverage for Denmark's first game at this World Cup against Tunisia. Totally focused, to kind of stop all the clocks type build up. Totally focused on Christian Eriksen, who, as we all know, actually died, for a few seconds or a minute or so. He was actually passed away on the pitch during Denmark's game against Finland at last summer's Euros, and obviously, luckily, miraculously, be brought back to life, basically. And it was in front of our eyes. Now, I was going to that tournament. There was 4 games played at Hampden as part of Euro 2020. I had tickets for all 4, and then because of COVID, allocations were slashed, so I only got 2 tickets. One was for the last 16 match. We didn't know who that would be, but I was only 1 ticket for one of the Scotland games, which is Scotland against the Czech Republic, the first game. And it meant for the first time in my life, the only time in my life so far, I finally was getting to see my country in a major tournament, in a major finals tournament. I've seen all sorts of football, all sorts of European finals and what have you all over the place, but I've never actually seen Scotland in a tournament. And this happened, I think, 2 days before, and we're all sitting watching the television. Christian Eriksen, basically, you saw that the man had gone, to all intents and purposes. It was absolutely sickening. I don't know, but Brian, do you remember the coverage was very much like, this should just stop? The tournament should stop. I remember saying to my wife, I can't even go to this game now. I can't even go and watch Scotland because it just would seem so inappropriate,
Yeah, I think most people were of the view that it was disgraceful that Denmark had to actually finish that game as well. I think that was something that shocked a lot of people, the circumstances around that. I think
exactly. That's
it. Didn't sit right with me or most other people, to be honest.
That's it, and we're all kind of calling out, how brutal that was by UEFA. And what I'm really setting up here in a sick sort of way is just the fact that we're now getting people talking about stadiums where thousands of people have died building them, and there's no mention of it whatsoever. Quite rightly, we were all horrified about what happened to Christian Eriksen. It was a disturbing thing to watch. We're also thankful that the guy survived and is going to thrive again. Denmark have done so well at this tournament, but who really cares when it comes down to somebody's life? And that's the point I'm trying to make here in a more general sense. We've actually got thousands of people who did die, who weren't brought back to life, who weren't resuscitated, building the very stadiums that we're watching these games in. It does. I'm sorry to hark on about this, folks, but it needs to be said. We need to preface a couple of these pods with this fact of life, a fact of death. It really is a lot of horrors going on in the stage in this World Cup, and just really, I'd like to kind of bear that in mind, that we are cognizant of that before we go ahead with these pods, because it's kind of like FIFA versus FOMO. It's the horrors of FIFA staging this World Cup in Qatar and almost kind of instigating the deaths of these migrant workers versus the FOMO, the fear of missing out, because we're all football addicts. We all absolutely love it. And the quarterfinals have just been the latest series of epic games that have dragged us all in, had me out my seat, cheering. And it's like, as I say, I'm like a lapsed member of Amnesty International, and even I'm still forgetting about what's going on in the building of these stadiums because the football's just grabbed my attention. But we're just, the World Cup is so many magic moments, so many iconic moments. We get Diego Maradona goal versus England in '86, Zidane's headbutt, Gaza's tears, Marco Dardelli's crazed kind of celebrations in the 1982 World Cup final, and who of us can forget where we were when ahead of USA against Ghana in Natal, the 2014 World Cup. Co-commentator Robbie Savage noted that Clint Dempsey, the USA captain, wasn't singing the national anthem, and called him out for it and said, what kind of captain doesn't sing his own national anthem? How's that meant to inspire his troops? And 29 seconds into the match, Clint Dempsey gave the USA the lead as they won the game, because as everybody else on the planet could see, the guy was absolutely psyched out his nut. And talking of psyched out his nut, Mr. Brian Archer. I'll give you a formal introduction now, Brian. Are you as psyched out your nut for the rest of this World Cup as myself, or are you psyched out your nut about Michael Beale starting at Rangers? How's things?
A bit of both, to be honest. Yeah, it's been a good weekend watching the World Cup, and also Rangers coming back to kind of friendly action. That was good to see. A bit like yourself, I just can't turn the World Cup off, as much as we all disagree with everything else surrounding it and the horrors that have gone on to put it on. I just can't turn it off. Glued to the TV watching these quarterfinals, probably much like yourself. There's some good games to talk about, and looking forward to the semi-finals.
We'll do a quick bit of Rangers chat. Did you watch did you get to see the game on Saturday? Did you go to the game, or were you?
I watched the first half on the YouTube, and then I had to do some Christmas shopping, but I managed to see the first half.
Impressed? I think the first half was the one to see. It was slightly better.
I was, yeah. There was a noticeable difference in style of play. I know there'd been a lot of talk in the build up to this game. Beale had done talked quite a bit in the press, and like the players had talked a bit about his style of play and this front foot football they wanted to play. And I think we saw a good bit of that. I think there was a few things that was really good to see. The coordinated pressing was something that I noticed that we were doing a lot more of. It wasn't just, pressing, one player pressing for the sake of it. We were hunting in packs, if you like, which is great to see. We were playing the ball forward much quicker, much earlier, something that we all kind of complained about under Gio with the horseshoe nature of his play. But, Beale was back to, the quicker you can get the ball forward, the better, and we were doing that. I noticed, Tillman playing it forward much earlier, much quicker. Kamara obviously coming back in. I think it's well documented that Beale likes Glenn Kamara. Tav getting an assist. I think we all know how important a part that the fullbacks played when Beale was kind of implementing the system under Gerrard. So it looks like it's a bit more of a kind of switch back to that in terms of the fullbacks getting forward a lot more and playing a bigger role in creating and assisting and hopefully scoring goals as well. Plenty of positives. I didn't think Leverkusen were great, to be honest. I was kind of disappointed in them. Obviously, I remember playing them from the Europa League run a couple of years ago, and they were really good then. And to be honest, I had high hopes for Xabi Alonso as a manager. To be honest, I always thought he would make a really good manager, because he always seems quite an intelligent guy in terms of football-wise, but I really wasn't impressed with his team. Now, obviously, they're a good bit behind us in terms of preparation, so maybe that had a fair bit to play in it. So I'll maybe keep an eye on them in the Bundesliga and see how they do. But that'll be interesting. But I wasn't overly impressed with them on Saturday.
No, I was trying to tell myself that it was us that were making them look bad, but I think there's no doubt about it. They looked a bit leggy. I think Michael Beale even said that himself, that they were I think it's November they stop, or maybe because of the World Cup they stopped. Same as every other top flight, they stopped kind of late on in November, and they don't go back until I think it's mid-January because of the extra bad weather they have in Germany. But they definitely looked a bit slower. But I'm glad that we kind of took advantage of that, and I'm glad that you haven't taken advantage of this to kind of slag me off, because we did a wee preview of that friendly. I was saying Michael Beale, it'll be the team that he pits out. That'll be the team we start with. That'll be the team for the rest of the game, because he's going to have to get his team sorted for the Hibs game. So there's not going to be one of these friendlies where there's masses of substitutions at half time. And I was right, because we only made 7 substitutions at half time. So you were right on that one, weren't you?
Yeah, I think he said in the Friday press conference he did a sit down with RTV, and he said that this was an opportunity to give everyone a chance. And I kind of thought back to the comments that you'd made, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm probably right there. That was a good guess from me.
As we always tell folk in this pro, if I make a prediction, go and put money on the opposite happening, and you'll make an absolute fortune. 100% wrong, usually. I think segue is into the World Cup chat. Borna Barisic, obviously, we're all looking at young Adam Devine, kind of like basically should be like third choice right back, and there he is, first choice left back because of the injury to Ridvan, but also because Borna's over there. He played in the last 16 for Croatia in the World Cup. He's over there in Qatar. He's basically a squad member, though. He's back on the bench again for the quarter final against Brazil. But I'm pretty sure Borna will be, if Croatia go 2 steps further, I'm pretty sure he'll be the only guy to win the World Cup while a Rangers player. But like with Stefan Guivarch, won the 98 World Cup, and then he joined us shortly afterwards. He won it with France, and Rino Gattuso, he was at Milan, I think, when they won the European Cup. When he was at Milan when they won the Champions League, but he was also at Milan when Italy won the World Cup in 2006. So he's done it after being a Rangers player. But would you be? I'm pretty proud of the fact that Borna's got to this stage, kind of representing the Rangers, and that's one thing that's making me kind of hope. I'll be really proud if Croatia go all the way and do it. How do you feel about that yourself, mate?
Yeah, no, I'll be pretty proud, and also I'd imagine it's got benefits for Rangers in terms of, I think there's potentially financial benefits in it for Rangers, and I think they get money for players going to the World Cup. I'm not sure how much it is. I don't imagine it'll be massive amounts, but it's better than nothing, I guess. So there's always that aspect to consider. But yeah, from a purely kind of fan point of view, it's great to see one of our players reach the latter stages of the World Cup. So hopefully for him, he can go all the way.
I mean, it's a bit gutting that Juranovic is actually doing the same with Celtic. I was quite happy when they put out Japan. And that's the only game Borna played. He had his moments. It wasn't a brilliant performance, but he was kind of safe enough. But I was quite happy when they put Japan out. So that was one Celtic player out. But if Borna wins the World Cup, it means Juranovic wins it as well. But I think that'd be quite a nice thing for Scottish football in general. And I think obviously Borna's a player we've been trying to sell, isn't he? Basically, he's on the cusp of going. I think if Ridvan comes through. So if he could get a wee game, somewhere between now and the final, it would up his value as well.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I think he's kind of one of those players that if an offer came in that we deemed suitable, then I think Rangers wouldn't be too difficult to deal with. So hopefully if he gets, as you say, a game between now and the final, hoping they get there, then it might, up his value a bit.
Aye, doesn't. Moving on to the World Cup quarterfinals, what we're here to talk about, Brian. Friday we had 2 meetings of former winners with former losing finalists. And Saturday we had a nation in their first ever quarterfinal versus one whose best finish was third in 1966. Portugal were trying to reach their third semi ever. Then the only meeting between 2 nations who've been champions. That was France and England, 2 countries that have actually won the World Cup. It was all going to be one way or another epic, but I thought it was absolutely fantastic entertainment. What are your kind of general thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was really good entertainment. Overall, against the honest, there was loads of talking points in there, plenty of drama. Overall, the games, some good football, some decent goals. Yeah, all in all, I think the quality levels went up as we went through the rounds in this World Cup. I think. Obviously some surprises in there as well with Morocco, which is always good. You always want, a surprise or two in terms of a team getting to the latter stages that you don't necessarily expect. So that's always a good thing as well. So yeah, all in all, I've really enjoyed it.
It really had a bit of everything, didn't it? Just across the space of 4 games, it was fantastic. That's why I'm just doing my own kind of conscious watching, because I know, as we're talking about the beginning of the pods, the horrors that have gone on getting this World Cup on, but there's no denying, it's no kind of compensation. But I get totally sucked into the football, especially with it's been getting better. I think the last round of group games was phenomenal. Yeah. And then the last 16 was super dramatic. Lots of really exciting games, and then this just upped it a notch again. I've got to, for the quarterfinals, I've got to admit to a kind of bit of bias, a bit of nastiness. Back in 1982, when I was 12 years old, there's a lot of whinging old gets my age still go on about how they fell in love with the Brazil team in 1982 and how they were gutted when Italy came and kind of sorted them out. But I then kind of growing up, eventually it was my kind of early mid-20s when Brazil did win the World Cup in 94. And after that, I must admit, I've kind of I don't know if it's the kind of over flamboyance, there's always a lot of kind of guys who are, very publicly in love with Jesus while making hundreds of money and what have you. I don't know. There's just a kind of, maybe it's the way Nike kind of promote them all over the world while they try to make out they're the kind of the bastions of kind of bohemian football. I don't know, but there's something about Brazil which just became a bit pretentious as I got a bit older, and I've really enjoyed watching them getting knocked out World Cup after World Cup, and that was no different than Friday. It was like France in the 98 final, the 2006 quarter-final, they also beat Brazil. The Dutch Port Elizabeth in 2010, Belgium in Kazan, Croatia in the Education City Stadium, Al Rayyan, a really creepily named stadium because everyone thinks it going in that part of the world. But they destroyed Brazil's World Cup hopes, dreams and expectations. We kind of half predicted this in the last pod, Brian. After all the dancing celebrations against South Korea, we thought that was a bit much. But was this result about Brazilian cockiness? Were they overconfident, or was it more about the Croatian brilliance?
I think there was a bit of both. I think, we know that how good Croatia can be. Everyone keeps talking about, before every round, everyone keeps talking about Croatia going to be tired. Croatia going to be tired. They never tire. Look at Modric can do that all day. He's just, a real Rolls Royce of a footballer, and they've got some real quality around them. And Brazil, I don't think they created much. I think they just struggled to break Croatia down. I think they struggled to get their kind of creative players on the ball. I think they've got some fantastic players, and Vinicius Junior and Neymar we know all about, Richarlison, but they just struggled to get them into the game. And I think Croatia played their game plan to perfection in terms of keeping that back door shut and taking them all the way to penalties. And I kind of thought when it got to penalties that these stuttering run-ups that we talked about last time, that was going to do it for them, and I think it did. It just every time I see a player do one of these stuttering run-ups, it fills me with fear, and I think that's what done it for them in the end. It's a cruel way to lose it, but I thought Croatia were worthy of the winning for the kind of fight that they showed, in terms of they conceded that goal to Neymar quite late on, and then they showed the fight to come back and get the equaliser, and then take it all the way to penalties.
I mean, Neymar, like you say, he scored a brilliant goal. It's like he's piling into the box and he's playing 1-2s with two different players. Then he's rounding the goalkeeper and slapping it. And even Sosa, the left back that's keeping Bournemouth out of the team, he comes sliding across to cut down the angle, and he still has the speed of thought to put it into the top corner, to hit it high up into the top corner. It was a cracking goal. It was an amazing goal, but I felt as if, like you said, he didn't do enough. That was it. I know. Sometimes scoring a goal, if it's a winning goal, that's great. You look like you're pacing yourself, and you've been really patient. But just looking at him across this World Cup, and what he did at the last one, and no play. Do you think? I know he'll be 34 when the next World Cup comes around. And we're looking at Messi's 35 already. Ronaldo of Portugal, he's 37. But I just get the feeling he's been kind of towing his own entourage for a while. Do you think that's it for him? Do you think that's it for Neymar? Is he kind of? I mean, he equalled Pele's record of most goals scored, 77 goals for Brazil, which is amazing when he scored that goal the other night. But do you think that's him done in terms of World Cups?
I think so. I think he's been the golden boy of Brazilian football for so long, since he was 16 years old at Santos. He was everybody knew about him. He was this up and coming kid that all this expectation was put on, and then he got the big move to Barcelona. And I think in some ways he's not helped himself, in terms of, we all know about his personality and kind of what we see of him off the field. I'm not his biggest fan, to be honest, both as a player and and a person in terms of what we say with personality. And I think the fact that whole Brazilian team is built around getting the best out of Neymar, I just don't think it helps them as a team. I actually think they've got some phenomenal players out with Neymar in terms of you've got, Vinicius Junior, they've got Rodrigo, they've got Anthony at Manchester United, they've got Gabriel Jesus, Richarlison, they've got some real fantastic players there, but it feels like they all need to kind of almost like, be there for Neymar. They all need to carry the piano for Neymar essentially. And actually, I think they're actually some real world class players in their own right. And I think them kind of subsuming themselves to Neymar is kind of doing to the team's detriment a bit. So I mean, whether or not he'll retire, I guess he'll make that decision, but I don't think he'll be at that same level come the next World Cup. And Brazil have always got the next wonder kid coming through. So potentially by that time there's somebody to take his place. But I just think the way the team's built, just to be completely for him, I think doesn't help the team overall, and he doesn't really do enough to kind of justify that at times. When you look at Argentina and Messi, it's a bit the same, but Messi's still got that real star quality where just in the blink of an eye he can produce the magic and win them a game, as we've seen in this World Cup. And I don't think Neymar's quite got that.
I think what happens with me, you end up reading too much into stuff sometimes, because I totally agree with you. And I think sometimes, kind of confirmation bias, you look for stuff that backs that up. But it was at the end of that game against the Koreans. And by the way, I think it's kind of been argued by a few people that, it could be kind of xenophobia or even racism to have a problem with the Brazilians doing all their dancing after the goals against South Korea. But that's not what we were talking about the other night. And you didn't have a problem with it at all, quite rightly. I'm up for a bit of madness. I love it. I love a bit of entertainment. But it was just me. I just felt as if they were getting too far ahead of themselves in terms of concentration, in terms of focus for the tournament. And this stuff you see, like Neymar coming on late. He came on late for one of the games in the group stage.
He did,
like for the second half. He came down the tunnel and they had to wait. He was still tying up his laces when they kicked off for the second half kind of thing. And then he brought out that banner for Pele after the South Korea game, a couple of them. And I'm not saying the guy should be, I don't know how you're supposed to look when you bring out a banner for a football hero from your country who's seriously ill and you're hoping he's okay. But there just was a kind of miserable look about him. There was something weird going on there, and he has the look, the kind of demeanour of a bit of a bully, and it looks like everybody's kind of running after him, and he's not good enough to justify that. I mean, he's good enough to be, in most teams in the world. Would love to have him playing for Scotland or for Rangers, but it's just one of the things you're thinking. He's not, like you say, especially with Messi, who's good 5 years older, 4 or 5 years older. The way he's been doing things at this World Cup, he has been leading Argentina. He has been the difference in their games. And just, I'm kind of disappointed because it'd be entertaining to watch Neymar at his best. But I think we have to talk about Croatia as well, because the goal Neymar scored came just after Brozovic, or deep into extra time here. Brozovic had missed a good chance for them. He kind of sclaffed it over the bar. They weren't making many chances at that point. But then you just realised when they come back, when they equalise, and then it goes to penalties and they win, it's 6 straight knockout games in the last 2 World Cup finals. Croatia have gone behind in every one of them, but the only one they've lost was the 2018 World Cup final. Is that, I mean, they set out their stall the first 20, 30 minutes. They really went at Brazil. And fair play, Juranovic, Celtic, he was fantastic against them. They really kind of said, look, we're not here to be any pushovers. And then they went back into their shell a bit, but they were defending deep, and it was like it was kind of controlled. They knew they were going to have to take a pounding for Brazil. So this thing where they constantly go behind, I think they went 1 down after like a minute, I think, to Denmark in the last 16 of the last World Cup, and still won it, on penalties. So is it the kind of craziest or the kind of ballsiest or the kind of weirdest game management that Croatia have got?
I think they've definitely got that kind of will they win, where they know that if they go 1 behind, they don't panic. They don't start hitting along or changing up their game plan. They just know that they keep doing what they're doing. The chances will come and they'll take them. And they've got the quality of players on the park to do that. We've seen, I'm sure we'll talk about Portugal and Morocco. But Portugal sort of panicked a bit when they went 1 down quite early on. I thought they panicked, but Croatia don't do that. They just they're quite calm and they're quite prepared to just play their own game, and they've got confidence in their team that they know that the chances will come, and inevitably they'll take one of them to at least get it to extra time, and that's what they did. They left it late, but the chance came, they took it, and I think they would have had confidence that if they could get it to penalties, they would win, and that's how it ended up being. But it's also a good trait to have, that kind of ability to come from behind. It's not something you want to be doing too often, but I think it's a good trait to have. It's something they've obviously got a lot of experience in doing, and something that will stand them in good stead.
This is, I mean, what did they do in the group stage? It was only Canada that they scored against. I mean, they beat Canada 4-1, but it was 2-0 in the other two games. Yeah. So, and then they go, it's like, and a goal down to Japan as well. They've come back and won that in penalties. It's like they're not scoring a lot of goals. It's almost like they're, kind of spreading it out, what kind of good points they've got and making it really work for them across the tournament.
They're definitely missing a kind of clear, number 9 goal scorer type. Tony Ochulak, for example. But they seem to be making up for that by getting goals out of other players around the rest of the team.
Aye, big Tony Goals must be sitting at home watching that, thinking, I'd have put that away. I'm what you need. You know what I mean? Yeah. But no, we've got him. He's playing for us just now, and that you can just keep focused on that. The thing I love about Croatia, and why it's not just a case I don't particularly like Brazil, but I really enjoy Croatia because they've got a population of 3.4 million. There's been a lot of chat about this recently. In Scotland, population of 5 million, and one of the things it proves to me that Scotland have kind of zero excuse for never having got past the first round of any finals tournament. Or it's going to be 28 years, since we've qualified. If we get to the next World Cup, it'll be 28 years since we've even qualified for the finals of a World Cup. And this is like a 32 team World Cup we've had. How do you feel about Scotland, Brian? Does that annoy you in the same way? Do you actually care about Scotland, the international team, that much? And the likes of Denmark, Uruguay, Croatia, all doing so well in major tournaments. Uruguay have won a couple of World Cups and they've got a phenomenal record. Does that make you angry or kind of ashamed about Scotland, where the first ever international match was played?
To be honest, it's made me think, certainly over this tournament, when we've seen, the smaller nations do so well, it has made me think and kind of ask the question in my own head of, what was Scotland's excuse? Why can we not get to these tournaments and, maybe get out of the group? I've never seen Scotland at a World Cup in my lifetime. So it would be nice to see them there. It would be nice to kind of just get that buzz about the country and just kind of feel that. I think there was a bit of buzz last summer when we got to the Euros, and I kind of enjoyed that. I'll be honest, I'm not, the biggest Scotland fan. I like to see them doing well. I always like to see them get to tournaments. But maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest Scotland fan, because I've not had that experience of following them at a tournament and kind of feeling that kind of passionate way about them. But it would be nice to see them get to a World Cup. And like you say, when you've got, nations like Croatia with kind of smaller populations than Scotland getting to these tournaments and getting to the latter stages of it, it does make you ask the question of, why can't we be at least getting there and then getting out of the group? What's the reason behind it? We've had countless studies by various professionals and professors asking this question as to why, we don't bring through the same talent as Croatia, why we don't bring through Luka Modric's and these types of players. And I'm sure you could probably do a whole podcast on it, but it would be nice to just see us starting to get to these World Cups and then starting to, see if we can get out of a group stage and kind of progress a bit further.
I think even there's a lot of Rangers fans and Celtic fans are kind of like, I don't support the national team or Scotland, and I think they try to make out that Scotland is anti-Rangers or anti-Celtic, and it is to a certain. I've been Scotland games and both sides are getting it. In fact, the last couple of games I went to, we had the minute silence for the Queen getting booed through, and the game against the Ukraine, and then the next game was against the Republic of Ireland. So we had the Republic of Ireland national anthem getting booed as well. So it was like, it's almost like equal opportunities. And I think that's as close as you get in football to everybody coming together. No, we'll all hate for different things together, and that's. But I see it. It's weird. I'm kind of against patriotism in general, but I love, I would just love to see Scotland doing something. That's when it really gets to me. Is if you're looking at the Scotland national team, just been absolutely, just terrible. And this idea that the SFA used to tell us. I remember when we were qualifying for like 5 consecutive, World Cups. kind of 70s into 80s and 90s and that. And the SFA would tell us, well, we're doing quite well just to get there, because considering the size of the population. But I mean, Uruguay, they've got, I think, 3.8 million. They've won the thing twice, and been to about another 3 semi-finals. It's not about the size of the, it's like adage about not about the size of the man in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the man, and it's not about the population. It's about how much you love it. And I actually look at the All Blacks, New Zealand, and the rugby, and that's another tiny nation. New Zealand, it's a lot of places named after Scotland, the Scottish places, and New Zealand, there's quite a high rates of depression there as well. And they have one sport that they're absolutely insane about, and that's rugby union, and they've made themselves the best in the world at it. I just don't see why we can't do the same. And it really, I get a strange kind of half angry but half encouraged when the likes of Croatia are doing this, on the cusp of getting to their second consecutive World Cup finals. But that's enough lecturing from me, my kind of bête noire. We have to look at this. The other quarter-final on Friday, absolutely sensational. The Netherlands against Argentina. Croatia kind of dominated the first 20 minutes against Brazil to set the tone of the game. But Argentina went the other way about. They seemed to sit back for the first kind of half hour against the Netherlands. And I think we're talking about how the Argentina maybe don't have the athleticism of a team like the Dutch. But then you get like Acuna. He kind of does Denzel Dumfries twice. He kind of rakes him. I think it was the first half. Actually, a real sly kind of foul on him that kind of disables Dumfries for a while because he's a kind of roving fullback for the Dutch. And then later on, he kind of cons him for the penalty for Argentina's second goal. It looks like, let's put Argentina 2 up. It looks like the Saudi Arabia defeat they had in their first game is years ago, and they're back to being the team that won the Copa America. How good are Argentina looking, Brian? Do you think they're going to win it?
I think they're coming into form just at the right time. I think they're finding that balance with Messi. I think in previous tournaments it's felt like Messi's had the weight of the world on his shoulders. This time it feels like he's actually enjoying his football. He's found his place in the team. He's the leader of the team. He doesn't have to charge after every ball. He's kind of mastered that conserving energy. We spoke about it last time where he just kind of walks about the pitch when he's not got the ball, but he's actually like scanning for the best areas to be in when possession turns over, and he seems to have mastered that. And the rest of the team's kind of built to around that and to kind of facilitate that for him. And they're definitely getting the best out of him in the way that Brazil didn't get the best out of Neymar, I thought. And yeah, they're definitely coming into form at the right time. So it wouldn't shock me to see them lift the trophy, and I'd quite like to see Messi do it just to kind of cement himself as really the greatest for me. Certainly of my generation anyway. I already think he's the greatest. I know kind of people older than me might say Maradona or even Pele, and some people say Ronaldo. For me, it's Messi, and I think if he was to win the World Cup, that's him got everything that he could possibly win, and that would just cement his place as the greatest. And it wouldn't surprise me, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's scoring the winning goal in the final. It would just be such a Messi thing to do.
I know, and I think it's getting to the stage. I mean, again, going into this tournament, I'm like, oh, Messi, he's been taking money for Qatar, through Barcelona and then through PSG, and he's doing his adverts for Saudi Arabia, who I think have beheaded 132 people this year, the Saudi state. And I'm doing that thing. I was like, I don't really want it, but the minute I see him playing football, you're just totally, I hope this guy wins the World Cup, And I thought, you're exactly right. You were saying this the other night, mate, in our previous pod about how he's been pacing himself. He knows what age he is, and he's been timing it. But it's not, as we're saying earlier, it's no Neymar, it's no even Cristiano Ronaldo. He's not a bit part player, despite being like 34, 35. He's that ball, the little burst of speed, and then the ball through to Molina for the first goal. It's absolutely sensational. And then he's, even getting into the off-field, he's scoring the penalty under amazing pressure, and then it goes to penalties. They can almost throw it away, Argentina, and he's standing up like a captain. Neymar was going to take the 5th penalty for Brazil, never got that far. Messi's just like, I'll take the first one. I'm the captain. Bang, there you go. Put them in the lead in the shootout. He was absolutely sensational. Do you think he looks like is he actually going to drag them to this final kind of single-handedly? And did you also, I noticed his off-field kind of performance. He was getting into a bit of antics. He's the quiet guy, Messi. He's a quiet guy compared to Ronaldo and that big thing. Ronaldo's a kind of mouthy, kind of aggressive one, whereas Messi's known as being a quiet guy, keeps himself to himself, but he was getting right in the face of Louis van Gaal and taunting the Dutch players and what have you. Do you think that's a sign that he's super up for it? He knows this is his moment.
Yeah, I think that's a sign of he's comfortable in his own skin at the minute. He's very comfortable of where he is in this Argentina team, and that's not always been the case. We've seen he's retired previously when he's not been going well, and there's always been kind of rumours of rifts in the camp with other players and stuff. I think this time he's finally kind of comfortable with his status in that Argentina squad, and he's kind of, and that's how he's kind of showed leadership. Is he's been that wee bit aggressive and kind of getting the other players up for it, and I kind of like that wee bit of needle that was in that game against the Netherlands. There was definitely a good bit of needle in there, which I always like. And I think that image of him when he scored the penalty in the shootout, when he just stood there with his arms outstretched as if, yeah, this is what I do. Kind of similar to Cantona. I remember the image of Cantona doing the same after he scored the free kick. And for me, that was kind of what it reminded me of. And I think if he does go on and lift the trophy, that could be the kind of lasting image of this World Cup, is just Messi standing there with his arms outstretched. Kind of, this is what I do. This is, this is my tournament.
Absolutely. But I think ITV, we've got to mention the Dutch, because they look dead and buried in that game, up until about the kind of 80th minute. But it was ITV mentioned in their game last week against the USA that the Dutch hadn't lost a game at the World Cup finals by more than a single goal since the 78 final, when Argentina beat them 3-1 in Buenos Aires after extra time. And the Dutch nearly won that with the last kick of the ball in the kind of 90 minutes. Wout Weghorst comes on as a sub, like little over kind of 12 minutes to go. Cracking header, that the ball into the box is just for the big guy to head in the back of the net is a thing in this World Cup. But that was a cracking version of that goal. It was a lovely header from him. But then with 12 minutes, then was it 101st minute or something? The injury time, the free kick, absolutely for the Koop Miners, the lovely kind of just flat free kick right into his feet, where he turns round and sweeps it in. Absolutely sensational. And did you feel sorry for them, or did you think it was their own fault for kind of leaving it too late?
I did feel sorry for him. I felt sorry for Van Gaal. I think we all knew kind of his health situation at this tournament. I really wanted them to do well for him, and I thought that might give them the extra spark to go on and get to a final or even win it, just to do it for him. And I thought when they scored that free kick, I mean, I don't really know what to call it, the balls to even try that, and the kind of in that late in the game. Imagine if that hadn't come off. Imagine if that was Rangers in Seville and they tried something like that and it hadn't come off. Imagine the fume on Twitter. But they just went, no, we're trying this, and it came off. And I thought when that came off, I thought, right, that it's got to be theirs. It's they've got to win this now after that. But I think Argentina were just a bit too efficient for them in the penalties, and I've got to give a shout out to the Argentinian goalkeeper. I think he seems to be taking a page out of Alan McGregor's book in terms of the penalty saving. He's pretty good at that.
They weren't just ordinary saves, but the first two saves weren't just about the players, the Dutch players not hitting the ball correctly. They were well struck penalties.
Yeah, I thought they were all pretty good penalties, but fair play to the keeper. He made some cracking saves.
Proper save. Did you think there was any danger of taking the celebrations too far? Because he was getting really psyched up. He was really getting the crowd going and all that. And it's thinking, and then an Argentinian, one of his teammates misses a penalty. You think, is he taking that too far, or do you think that's part of like Messi standing there, as you were saying, kind of milking it? Was that a part of out-psyching the Dutch?
When Argentina missed their penalty, I thought, oh wait a minute, he might have been celebrating a bit too soon there. But I think, to be honest, I think potentially that actually helped them get over the line and possibly put a bit of doubt in the Dutch players' minds, because I noticed the players on the halfway line, they were sort of doing the same as well in terms of giving it to the fans and stuff, as well as Martinez doing it. So I wonder if that just kind of helped the Argentinian players and put a bit of doubt in the Dutch players' minds as well.
I'm going to have to go back to Messi. I'm going to have to talk about him just one more time, mate, because this is, I think that part of it is, it's no, I'm part of any Messi fan club or whatever, particularly, obviously, I think he's just an amazing footballer. Nobody who likes the game can deny that. But this is a guy who, accused Rangers of anti-football, which is, it's an Argentinian expression, anti-football. He knows exactly how wrong he was to say it. Anti-football was something that Estudiantes de La Plata did in the kind of late 60s and early 70s that involved them like keeping darning needles in the fold of their socks and, stabbing players on the park with them and finding out about players, kind of injury history and targeting them in the park. So, us just kind of marking well and being a bit defensive for a good 0-0 was hardly anti-football. But yet here I am just totally forgiving a young guy for saying a stupid thing. And I've just get caught up in it. I'm wanting him to win this World Cup. But the thing is, he's actually done everything else except win a World Cup now. He's getting to that stage.
Yeah.
He won like the Youth World Cup. He's won the Olympics. He's done everything in the club game. He's won more Ballon d'Or than anybody else. I think other people have scored in more Champions League finals and have won more Champions League medals, but not many. And he's won everything, Barcelona domestically and PSG. But I saw him the other night. I couldn't help noticing it was a World Cup quarter final, and he got away with a handball.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that's a wee tiny. It was in the middle of the park and what have you. And he got booked later on, so technically it did stop him getting sent off. And you're thinking that's a wee hand of God moment. That's his little version of Diego. And then even in the '86 final, Argentina were 2-0 up against the Germans. The Germans come back to 2 each in that game. And Rudi Voller celebrated with a knee slide exactly the same way Weghorst did when he equalised on Friday night. And Argentina that night, in that game in '86, Maradona puts Burruchaga through and they won the game in the 90 minutes. But Argentina come right back at them in extra time. Renewed belief. They were unlucky not to win it in extra time. And then Messi steps up, takes a penalty. Are we getting to this stage where even if he doesn't actually win this World Cup, is he going to be remembered now? People will start thinking, a semi-final, a losing final, you won a Copa America, Olympics, everything else, this guy is the greatest. Or is it all just serving to emphasise he's no done it? He's no done the ultimate,
I think you'll always get your two camps. The ones that think he's the greatest, and whether he wins this or not, you'll always get ones that think he's the greatest. For me, it probably won't change my opinion of him. I think just because he's the one that I've seen the most of in terms of I grew up when he was in his absolute peak at Barcelona. That's I've never seen anything like it. I don't think we will ever see anything like it in terms of the sheer numbers that he was posting in terms of goals and assists and the skill that when he single-handedly tore Arsenal apart in the Champions League. That game alone is one that stands out for me. So for me, he'll be the greatest whether he wins or not. But then I think you'll always get your kind of older generation that's seen Maradona that'll think he probably has to win a World Cup just to cement himself as the greatest. I hope he does it because I think it would be a fitting way for him to just cement his place as the greatest. So yeah, and I can totally see him doing it. I think it'd be the most Messi thing ever for him to lead his team to the final and score the winning goal in the final. And then you see him lifting the trophy at the end of it.
I was even got an old man like me hoping something like that happens. So he's definitely. I think that's definitely the case. We always kind of need to see him winning it just to kind of justify it. Jonathan Pearce, BBC commentator the other night, I don't think he recognised Jorge Valdano, who was sitting they're doing the close-ups of the personalities, the ex-players sitting in these kind of creepy white leather seats they've got up in the stands there in these stadiums. And Jorge Valdano scored in the 1986 World Cup final, which Argentina won. And you're thinking he didn't. I think he won maybe 2 UEFA Cups, Valdano, and a lot of La Liga's a cracking player, but nothing like the achievements of Messi in every other aspect of his game. But he won the World Cup with Argentina, and he scored in the final. And to me, that makes him like an immortal, But is it fair? Is it fair that players are getting judged because with your national team, obviously, like maybe George Best is the greatest example. You can be one of the greatest players of all time, but if the rest of your national team isn't as good, and Northern Ireland always really decent players, but they were never good enough to kind of get into a lot of major finals. Is that a bit unfair in international football? You've got likes of we got Dejan Stankovic holds a record for playing for 3 different countries at the World Cup finals. It was like Serbia and Montenegro and Yugoslavia, but it's kind of technicality. But you've got the Williams brothers at this World Cup. One's playing for Ghana, one's playing for Spain. The Boateng brothers are kind of half brothers. They played against each other back in 2014, Germany against Ghana. Is it getting to the stage? Do you think that there's people out there who have no time for international football? And is it really is it even relevant anymore to have international football when borders are changing and when the best teams in the planet are bought by the biggest clubs on the planet? Is international football kind of relevant, and do we actually need it anymore?
For me, it's still relevant. For me, I think we need it. I think there's something a bit unique and a bit special about, the best from a particular country going up against another country. We all know about, the Champions League is like, the best club teams in Europe. And then the Premier League, obviously, that's, came to prominence since, Sky put all the money in and stuff like that. So they've obviously grown in popularity, but for me, I still think there's something quite special about the best in a country going up against another country. And you're right, it's probably not fair that we judge individual players on what they do for the national team. I mean, even if you look at modern day, you've got, Salah, who's most people would say is one of the greatest players at the moment, and he's not at this World Cup. Haaland as well, another phenomenal player that's not at the World Cup. Lewandowski, probably one of the best strikers of the modern day, but can't reach those kind of achievements for Poland just because the national team he plays in doesn't have that kind of quality of players. So it's probably a bit unfair the way we kind of judge these players based on what they do. And on national level, we all say, Messi needs to win it, the World Cup, to go down as the greatest. But is that fair? Because he's, when he's at Barcelona, he's got Xavi and Iniesta and all these types next to him, but he's not quite got that same quality of Argentina. But for me, it still holds relevance. I still can't turn off the tournaments to the Euros and the World Cup and the Copa America. For me, I still love watching them. I just think there's something quite special about the best from one country going up against another country. So for me, it's still something I enjoy. And hopefully, it will stick around for a long time yet.
I'm quite addicted to it myself. I think it's like kind of lingua franca. It's a way countries can kind of talk to each other. I know it ends up being, there's been wars started between countries that are, the football kind of exacerbated them. But generally, I still have great hope that football kind of unites more people than it kind of breaks up or antagonises. And for me, it's kind of went full circle. When I was a kid, I'm doing that old man thing. It was like, you only get so many live games in the telly, and there was very few foreign players, or non kind of British Isles players on the telly in British football in the club scene. So it was always great in a World Cup because you got to see like different makers of kits and different styles of football and what have you. And it's almost like with the Champions League, the deregulation of television rights and what have you, you can now watch the best players in the world all the time. You've got it. If you've got your BT, you've got your Prime, got Sky Sports. You can see this. You can see any team playing anytime you like, and you can see the best players in the world. But it's almost going to come full circle in that so I now like to see them going back to being in their own country. In the Euros, the Copa America. I even like what I love watching the Africa Cup of Nations and stuff like that. It's great to see people in their kind of supposed kind of home environment. I know there's a lot of players that French-born players playing for Morocco and vice versa. But it's good to watch. Sorry, mate.
The other thing that we've seen this World Cup that it does that the club game just can't do is it unites a country. We've seen that with Morocco and the celebrations over there. Even the USA as well. We've seen the celebrations over there, and we've seen that throughout this World Cup. When teams win, they usually you'll get the news reports will be in that country, and you'll see the celebrations in the streets, and that's something that I think club football just can't quite reach, is that kind of level of uniting a nation behind that kind of cause, even especially in these countries where football's maybe not the most dominant sport, but for that kind of period, I'm thinking like some Australia, for that period of the World Cup when they did better than what they expected. It seemed to unite everyone, and it kind of generates a bit more interest in the sport as well. So I think that's kind of the effect that these tournaments have that you can't quite replicate in club football.
That's a great point. I just think about myself. The other side of that is like, I'm not exactly the world's biggest tennis fan, but when Andy Murray was getting close to winning Wimbledon, I was a man possessed. I just absolutely infatuated with it. So I think it brings in people that are not, and I hate, to be honest, I'm miserable. I hate that when it's like tourists, people who don't really know their football and all that, and I'm like, I've been paying money to watch this when it was rubbish, and suddenly they've qualified for something you not celebrate. But it can be a great thing, and I think there's a lot of bitterness towards the Scottish national team just now. A lot of reasons you can find, for hating Scotland or whatever, thinking Scotland hate you. Particularly as a Rangers supporter, there's been a lot of bad stuff going on towards our players. But I think if we get more Rangers players in the Scotland team and they do well, that's the number one way of winning people over. And shutting up these kind of divisions. And I think if Scotland can do better and get into more tournaments and say bring out that kind of thing, people don't care. People don't go about saying, I've not watched enough Scotland games, I shouldn't be celebrating. They just go and they go, I'm Scottish. My team that's my national team winning, and they'll go out in the street and they'll celebrate with a guy for another club that supports another club or whatever. It's a great thing, We better talk about Morocco against Portugal. I missed a bit of that on Saturday because I was watching Rangers. Quite a strange thing in the middle of a World Cup. I'm away watching Rangers at Ibrox. That's a first. But I get back just in time to see the final whistle and the mad celebrations. I've watched bits of it back. Were you more impressed by the North Africans, by Morocco getting into the semi-final? Or were you disappointed by Portugal?
I think after the previous game with Portugal, when they kind of, were so impressive, and I think everyone sort of expected a repeat of that. I was quite disappointed with how they performed, but you can't not be impressed with what Morocco have done in this tournament. I think the managers rightfully earned loads of praise for the way he set the team up in terms of the organisation of that team. I think, am I right in saying he hadn't had long with the team when he joins that? Am I right in saying he joined not long before the World Cup?
No, because I think he won the African, was it the African Champions League? I think where a Moroccan club, perhaps maybe. I think they beat an Egyptian club in the final. So I don't think he's been in the job that long. I couldn't tell you exactly how long, but it's not been that long now. Yeah,
so I think the job he's done's been phenomenal. And that's one of the things I love about the World Cup. How many people would have predicted Morocco getting to a semi-final? It's you can't write it. It's great to see. I think in terms of for Portugal, as disappointed as they'll be, they do have some really good players coming through. I think we're all kind of thinking that that'll be Ronaldo's last appearance. I think with that kind of shadow kind of lifted from the national team, I think they could go into bigger and better things in terms of the youngsters they've got coming through. If they give them time to kind of nourish and settle in, I think they could go on and do big things. Certainly the Euros will be keen to watch out for them. I'm sure Ronaldo will be disappointed for the way it ended for him, but I think I think Morocco were well worth their win. Portugal just seemed to panic a bit when they went one down, and they kind of brought on Ronaldo very early. I think they brought him on at like the 50th minute, and I thought that's a bit early to be kind of abandoning plan A and going to plan B. But I thought Morocco were well worth their win, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they perform in the semi-final.
It's almost like you don't want to have too big a win in this World Cup. Like Morocco, 0-0s, Croatia had 0-0s, and then they end up, they're still in the tournament when at the final stages, but like of Spain won 7-0, it all went south for them after that. And there's Portugal, where they were just looking like dark horses, as they usually are. They win 6-1 against the Swiss in the last 16, and then bang, they can't even get the one goal that would save them. Portugal, they're starting to kind of almost annoy me, Brian. When they won the Euros, they finally won a major trophy, in only their second major final. They lost the Euros when they were the hosts in 2004. They lost the final that time. But I thought they've only been in semi-finals of the World Cup. An amazing football nation. Again, not a massive population, but they've got, Porto, Benfica, and that winning European Cups and Champions Leagues. That they're frequently, they kind of slip into being the fifth best league in the kind of UEFA coefficient rankings. They've got fantastic players at all the best clubs, in the world. Man City, especially just now, Man United. Fernandes hits the post, hits the bar straight after they score, straight after Morocco take the lead with it. And again, the high ball into the box, making a Malik Tillman type header for the fella. But after that, they seem to spend a lot of time just like trying to pressure the officials, trying to win penalties. When the fella gets sent off for Morocco, it was Fernandes was right up there telling the ref, that's his second yellow. Are they concentrating more on the kind of cynical side of the game than the actual skill that they've all obviously got? What is going wrong for Portugal?
I mean, I suppose when you've got Pepe in your team, that shouldn't be a surprise.
That's a big Brazilian Pepe.
But I think when you see Pepe's comments after the game, he was talking about all the referees Argentinian and trying to start some sort of conspiracy theory. I think that kind of tells you that they are kind of concentrating a bit too much on that kind of cynical side of the game rather than just, letting their talented players shine through. They've got some really top class players in there. But yeah, I think they were just concentrating a bit too much on, the kind of the cynical side and trying to win, kind of fouls that maybe weren't fouls or trying to get players booked and sent off and stuff like that. And really, if they'd just sort of played their game and tried to kind of replicate their performance there against the Swiss, then they probably would have got that one goal, which would have potentially saved them and got them extra time, and then they could have went through. But yeah, I think it feels a bit like an end of an era for Portugal with Ronaldo. That's probably his last game now, but also potentially the beginning of a new era. They've got some good young players coming through. We've seen the Gonzalo Ramos against Swiss scoring a hat trick. I'm sure he'll play a big part in the future. So there'll be an interesting one to watch going forward. I think Pepe surely has got to retire now at 40. You would think. So it'll be interesting to see them at the Euros in terms of how they progress there. I think Santos, the manager's potentially looking like he might be replaced as well. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, hopefully when they get to the Euros, they'll get some of they kind of let their football do the talking a bit more.
And talking about Ronaldo, I thought it was quite graceless the way he just walked straight off the park, and I don't know, I never really believed the tears with Ronaldo. It looked like he's trying to make it all about himself. We've got the first ever African nation getting into the semi-finals. I'm not expecting the guy to be delighted about it if it's his team that's get beat, but what did you make of the way, we don't know yet if that's him retiring from international football. We'd probably try to hang on for 5 caps to get his 200th cap or whatever, but what did you think about him and the way he kind of left the park at the end?
I think it was just a bit typical of the Ronaldo that we've seen in recent years, and that it's all got to be about him. I think if you look at the interview that did with Piers Morgan, it's all about him, and it's the Ronaldo show. And I think it's pretty typical of what we've seen. He's not had the best couple of years in terms of football wise. With the clubs he's been at, he seems to have been kind of left under a cloud at Juventus, and then he came back to Man U, and that was supposed to be the big return, and leading them back to a Premier League. And I think people were forgetting he was, however many years older than what he was the first time around, and he wasn't quite at that level. And again, he made it all about him. He seems to be a player that's struggling with his own kind of mortality almost, and he's not quite, Messi's sort of aging gracefully, and Ronaldo's kind of not. He's really struggling with that whole, not being able to do what he used to do, 10 years ago kind of thing, and the fact that he's not, the be all and end all now. I think he's really struggling with that. In terms of his football career, you can't really argue with it. He's won almost everything there is to win. And undoubtedly he's been one of the best. So I suppose from that point of view, most people will see it as a disappointing way to go out. But it was a shame that kind of in the final moments he sort of made it all about him again.
I couldn't help putting it together with his greatest moment in the international stage, or what should have been in his eyes, and it's when Portugal actually won the Euros, and he gets injured early doors in the game, and he then decides, I'll make it all about me by standing next to Santos on a touchline and basically try to outmanage the manager. And if people say, oh, that's great, he's out there, what a great teammate and what have you. He was trying to take over. He knew they were going to win this thing, and he's like, how can I make it all about me despite the fact I've been injured? And to me, it's a total no-no. I mean, I don't care what level of football you play. You always shake hands with your opponents at the end. Or a real class guy like Messi, you go right up to the opposition manager and slag the shit out of him. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. That was a proper end to a game, wasn't it? I remember the Argentinians losing the quarterfinal in penalties to Germany in 2006, and they started a rammy with the Germans because they'd get beat. So this is them winning a quarterfinal, and they started a rammy with the Dutch. So it just shows you they don't care. It doesn't matter what the result is. They'll always behave exactly the same. The Argentinians, absolutely class. We better talk about France against England, mate. England go out in penalties yet again, or a penalty, as the case may be. Big obsession of mine, as I say, the mentality compare it to the Croats, what they do in these matches. Harry Kane being unable, people are saying that it was out-psyching him, out-vibing him because he had to face Hugo Lloris's teammate twice. Does that sum up the fact that teams for the British Isles, international sides we've got, just don't have the mental aptitude, just not the mental attitude to win major international tournaments?
I mean, possibly. I think it's kind of like you were saying, you've kind of got to get close to then go and win it, and England haven't really gotten close in recent years. Although they got to the semi-final of the World Cup last time, but they've not got that kind of track record over, the last 2 or 3 World Cups of kind of getting that close and then going on and winning it. I do wonder how much, coming up against his club teammate played a part in that second penalty, or how much it was just the pressure of the whole situation.
Just facing anybody facing the same goalie twice to take a penalty.
Just that whole kind of pressure. He knew that this was the one chance. They hadn't created a lot from open play. They didn't really look like scoring from open play, although they did have good periods in the game. They dominated for a lot in the second half, but I still didn't think they looked like creating an awful lot during open play. So I think that was probably in his mind, that this is our one chance to get back into the game and potentially get it to extra time and then penalties and then see where it goes from there. So I think it was a real pressure penalty that just got to him. And Kane himself, he's not got that track record of winning loads of trophies. You kind of need to have that kind of, to build that sort of mentality. You need to have been through the course of winning at club level as well. He's not really got that. So you wonder if that kind of showed a bit there as well. I mean, overall, I find it difficult to criticise England in this game because I thought generally they played some decent stuff. They had, the French on the ropes in the second half. I thought, even though they didn't look like creating loads of chances, but I thought they had the better the play at times in the second half. Maguire had that header that just shaved the post. I thought the game plan everybody talked about, Mbappe versus Walker, I thought Mbappe was pretty quiet. He had the one run against Walker when he got past him. But apart from that, Mbappe was pretty quiet in the game. I thought Walker marshalled him well. But I think ultimately, kind of the Frenchies kind of nous is what got it for them, in terms of they've been over the course, they've won it before, they've got that kind of inbuilt, mentality. They're a team of absolute winners in terms of Griezmann, Giroud, Mbappe, Dembele. They've all been over the course and won things both at international and club level. And I think that's what really got them to the win in the end.
Aye. For basically the last kind of quarter of a century, every team who's won the World Cup have gone out the following World Cup either in the group stage or in the quarterfinals. So that was a massive thing they did the other day just to win that game. I probably am being unfair on England, but it's because of my hang-up. I feel as if Scotland always do a kind of a watered-down version of whatever England do. We've always followed them in international terms. They were always getting to quarterfinals where we were always just kind of qualifying and so forth. But England won the World Cup. Of course, we were the first team to beat them, and that made us unofficial world champions, all that kind of nonsense. But if you look at, I'm talking about Croatia always going behind in these games and then winning them. England, I've been talking about how the reason I was kind of thinking they might do it this time was they'd finished fourth at the 2018 World Cup, third at the Nations League finals in 2019, and then second at the last Euros. But in all the games where they lost, when it finally came to an end, the semi-final against Croatia in 2018, they took an early lead. Same against, who was it, Holland? I think the Netherlands, they played in the semi-finals of the Nations League. They took the lead, and then Luke Shaw scores really early against Italy in the Euros final, but they can't see it through. It's almost like they don't have they can't do that game management thing that I'm talking about with the Croats. Almost it gets too much for them. But you're absolutely spot on. You look at France, Mbappe gets shackled. England did a good job in Mbappe, but then Giroud and Griezmann, I thought, everybody's talking about how are the French going to cope with Harry Kane this time when he drops back now. Griezmann did that even better. He's absolutely phenomenal. Giroud was phenomenal. And you've got Kante and Pogba are missing. They were injured before the tournament even started. They lost Lucas Hernandez. He's the Bayern Munich left back. They lost him to injury during the tournament, and they replaced him with his brother, who's a left back for AC Milan. And then they've got we're talking about the shackled Mbappe. you get a 22-year-old who plays, I think defensive mid for Real Madrid, scoring a phenomenal first goal. I don't think England could do anything about that first goal the other night. They could have tried to shut it down, but it was just what an amazing shot. Do they see the kind of depth of squad now, Brian? France just can't be beaten.
I think they've definitely got the best squad of the teams left in the tournament. Now, whether or not they'll go on and win it, I still think there's something about Mike saying that Argentina team that I can just see them. I can just see him dragging them to the trophy. So it'll be interesting. But they've definitely got the best squad. Even the players that don't make the starting lineup, Kingsley Coman, he's a phenomenal player. Bayern Munich player, phenomenal. And he comes on as a sub, and that just shows you, the real depth of squad that they've got. So they've definitely got the best squad. Giroud's having a brilliant kind of ending summary of his career. He never scored a goal at the last World Cup when they won it. I don't think now he can't stop scoring. And Griezmann sort of almost sacrificed himself in a way for the team in terms of he's playing that kind of midfield number 10 stroke number 8 role, and he's playing it brilliantly. He's kind of running games, and he's just sitting there picking passes and kind of controlling the tempo of games. So he's another one that's really come into form in that new position that he's been given with Pogba and Kante both out. And they've got Rabiot, who I think a lot of people is a bit of a joke figure for a lot of people, but he's another one that's having a really good tournament.
Yeah.
Next to Tchouaméni, who I think everyone knows is kind of one of the kind of bright up and coming stars, and obviously Real Madrid paid a lot of money for him, and that's the reason why.
Again, coming out of that Monaco school, the same as Mbappe. I think Mbappe wanted to miss out PSG and go straight to Real Madrid now. I think that's what he wishes he'd done, but his mates done it. And I think Brazil had that same depth of squad as well. Maybe arguable, but they seem to have much the same depth of squad. But like you're saying, they just don't seem to have that maturity. They don't have that nous, that kind of tournament maturity. But this is the first time tournament maturity has worked to this level in quite a while. At a holder getting through to the semi-final. And I think we look like we're on the cusp of seeing, for the first time in 60 years, a team actually retain the World Cup. Only the third time it's ever happened. We're on to the semi-finals now, Brian. A quick preview of the semis. I was going to do a whole thing about the Brazil. I'm obsessed with Brazil 1950, the fourth World Cup. What they did with the semi-finals there, it was a kind of 4-team group they set up instead of having a knockout. And as the World Cup concluded, I'll go on about it at some point, but we'll bin it tonight. Look it up on Wikipedia, folks, if you want. It's absolutely fascinating what happened in that tournament, the way they sorted out the last four. But getting into the semi-finals now, Brian, who do you think's? First question: who do you actually want to see winning each semi-final, and why?
I'd like to see Argentina and France win, just because I'd like to see an Argentina and France final. I think out of the 4 semi-finalists we've got left, that's the final I want to see. But it wouldn't surprise me if Croatia beat Argentina. I'd be honest, I'd be surprised if Morocco beat France, but the way they're playing and the kind of momentum they've got behind them, I guess you can never write them off. But an Argentina-France finals is what I want to see.
Aye. And I think I have to give a big shout out to Just Fontaine, who's probably going to be watching this. He scored 13 goals in the 1958 World Cup. And the 1958, he's scored the most goals of any Golden Boot winner in any World Cup finals. And he did it for France. And the thing is, he was born in Marrakesh, and he first played football for Casablanca, or a Casablancan club. His dad was French, and France actually, owned Morocco. Morocco was part of France when he was born. So this is going to be. He later managed Morocco as well, Just Fontaine. And he also features in the movie Amelie. There's a picture of him in that as well. Absolute legend, and he's still in the goal. I think he's about 90 years old. So this is going to be a derby, I think, the Just Fontaine derby when France play Morocco. And of course, the Moroccan manager, like a few of the Moroccan players, is French born. I thought they were absolutely phenomenal, their organisation and their determination the other night, Brian. There's, like we've said before, they've almost taken over as a kind of host nation. There's an Arab nation, and they're converging. The stadium, the noise they're making was absolutely phenomenal. I've seen this kind of story before. I mean, the USA, I was around in 1930, I was just a couple of years till I was born back then. But the USA, 30 years before CONCACAF was even founded, they made the first ever semi-finals of a World Cup. South Korea made the semi-finals of the 2002 World Cup, but it was in their part of the world, in their country. You know, that was 20 years ago. They've not really done anything since. The USA are always in the cusp. You know, they were unlucky not to get to the semis in 2002 as well. Do you think this African team, the commentator saying on ITV on Saturday, they've broken the glass ceiling, that's them. Do you actually think this is going to lead to any big, kind of move by the African nations? They'll suddenly start kind of dominating or getting their fair share of World Cups in the future?
I hope so, because it'd be great to see, we're all aware of the phenomenal players that we've seen from the African nations, Drogba's and players like that. They do produce some phenomenal players. So I hope that this does kind of give them a bit of momentum to start reaching the latter stages of World Cups. Because it'd be good to see, and you can see from the stadiums, that the fans absolutely, they love it, and they're right behind Morocco, and it brings a nice kind of different, I guess, just a different feel to it all. We're the kind of first African nation to reach this stage, so it's good. It makes a nice change. So I'd like to see kind of more African nations get into the last stages.
I think we can definitely see from the amount of Palestine flags that are floating about, and they're waving. They're quite happily waving the Qatar flag as well, and they're doing their prayers at the end of the game. I think they definitely see themselves more as a kind of Arab nation, or maybe a Muslim nation, than they probably do as an African nation. There's definitely huge cultural differences between the kind of Sahel, Maghreb countries, and, for example, Senegal, Cameroon and Ghana, the other African countries that have reached the quarterfinals. But I think it's been amazing, the atmosphere that they've brought. But I've seen it happening before, for the host. Yeah. I know they're not a host, but it's their part of the world, get to the semi-finals. If they actually got to the final, not just because they're playing France, it would be earth-shattering. It would be the biggest. It would be, for me, it would be the biggest shock of all time. And I feel it's a kind of small-minded, bitter thing to say, but I love the World Cup as being the best tournament. I think the Champions League in terms of football is now the best, the hardest tournament to win in the world. The best players are there, but would it actually cheapen the tournament? And I mean, we've got England are the only nation, I think, to win the World Cup. England and Spain, the only nation to win the World Cups and not get back to a final. It's always a team ends up. It's got to start somewhere, the kind of dominance, but there's very few teams. I think Sweden were runners up in '58, and they've never been to another final before or since. But usually teams have won their own continental competition a few times, have got to semis a few times, and then they'll be in a few World Cup finals. This is Croatia looking at getting back to their second. Would it actually cheapen the tournament anyway if Morocco suddenly turned up and won the World Cup?
No, I think it adds something. I think it's good to have a different name on the trophy that we've not seen before. I mean, I'll ask you this: did it cheapen the European Championships when Greece won it for you? Because that was kind of just as much a shock. And for me, Morocco were a better team to watch than what Greece were back then. So now I'm all for it. I don't mind seeing a different name on the trophy. But just for these semi-finals, I just want to see that Argentina-France final. For me, that's my reason for wanting France to win that one. I just want to see that Argentina-France final. I think that's got all the makings of being a real classic final.
Aye, and to be honest with you, that's a great point to make it, because I absolutely loved it when Greece won the Euros, because it Otto Rehhagel, famous German manager, in charge of them, and it was just, they were just going out there being defensive as hell and doing what they got to do. And it's that whole thing. I think we've been on the other side of that as Rangers fans. When Celtic fans tell us, "Oh, you should play more open, attractive football," what they mean is open up and let us through you. And I don't remember these same Celtic fans complimenting us for our bravery when we get beat 7-1 off Liverpool. So I always love it when I see a team just going out there and refusing to bow to this nonsense about aesthetics. When you're supporting a team, you just want them to win. And I thought Greece were absolutely phenomenal. And it's getting more difficult now because the tournaments, the Euros and the World Cup, are both expanding to the point where that kind of shock is getting harder. But you're absolutely right. I always like the Euros as a kind of a testing ground almost for the World Cup. But you're absolutely. I'm just being miserable with that one. But so do you think we're talking about the political problems, the human rights issues with this World Cup, but the football has got to a level? Do you think this has been in football terms, a classic World Cup?
I think it's been a really good one, whether it's been a classic. People always, at the end of every World Cup, they'll always ask, has this been the best World Cup? And I always find it a bit kind of redundant to try and rank them. I think this one's definitely, football-wise, it's been a good World Cup. The more interesting thing that I kind of wonder about is what effect has the World Cup being at this time of year had on the quality of football that we've seen. Just the fact that players, most of the I say most, a good portion of the players play in European leagues, so they've come into the World Cup right, smack bang in the middle of their season. So they're not having that break. They're not feeling kind of overly jaded with playing, 50 to 60 games for their club. They're kind of coming in probably at the peak of fitness and sharpness, and I do wonder kind of what effect that's had on the World Cup. And I wonder if, having it at this time of year and seeing that, football wise, it's most people would say it's been a success. Does that open, up for FIFA to do some more mad, crazy stuff with World Cups in the future? You can never rule anything out where FIFA are concerned. But yeah, I do wonder kind of what impact having the Winter World Cups had on the quality of football.
Aye. I think we better leave it there. I could talk about this all night. I think it's notable that the fewer games that are involved, the more we're talking about, the longer the pods are going on. This series of World Cup pods we're doing, Brian, I think that definitely says something about the drama, anyway, if not the actual quality of the games. But we better wrap it up there. Listen, folks, thanks very much for joining us again. The Rangers are playing again on Thursday night. The season, the domestic season's starting, so the regular pods have started. Back. The boys were on last night, Sunday. Stuart and Colin and Doogie were having a great chat about the Bayer Leverkusen friendly and the AGM. That's up there on our YouTube channel, what have you. So check that out on whatever platform you use. I'll be back, I think, on Wednesday for a preview of the Hibs game. And that's us back generally. But Brian and myself will certainly be continuing with these pods until the World Cup's over. Brian, thanks very much for joining us. Was that one okay, mate?
Thank you. Yep, another very enjoyable discussion.
That's it. We'll maybe get you back. We'll have a wee penalty shootout to decide who's going to host the next one and who's going to be the guest. But thanks very much for joining us, folks, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you.